Hello! ELRS stuff today, specifically ELRS receivers from RadioMaster who have produced these two PWM versions. If you're very new to RC and you're wondering what's PWM, it's the old way, very old way of doing RC, where you'd have an individual cable usually going to a servo or something like that in order to control your plane or car or boat or whatever. And they come in two flavours. You've got this one, which is the sort of traditional, I'd call it the laying down ones, where the connections go in there and the antenna goes out the side, and you've got this type here, which the plugs go in there and the antenna goes straight up. We'll have a better look, take them out of the packet. But I was thinking about what to put them in, because the very obvious place to put these in is sort of legacy planes and stuff, specifically ones that don't have a flight controller. Like this one doesn't have a flight controller, it's just literally got a receiver that's connected directly to the servos and the link to the ESC there, which drives the motor. Just a 3-channel system, very simple. However, this needs a little bit more sorting out. You notice there's a hole in it here. Another plane dropped off the wall, hit it, smashed up some bits. I've got to replace some bits. It's got an old immersion RC 600 milliwatts. That's no good now, and it won't even work with my current goggles. So that's a project for another time. So instead, as a more interesting project, I thought it'd be fun to take something I looked at in the past. This is a little car, comes with this little basic controller, good for about 100 meters. And I thought, oh, if I wanted to FPV that, I'd need a better receiver in it. And so I thought I could pop one of these in. We get like loads of range, I expect. I've never tried it on the ground before. So yeah, I'm going to convert this over to FPV. I'm going to put the ELRS PWM receiver in it, and we're going to see how it goes. And we'll go through how you flash these and set them up and stuff like that. Okay, let's open these up. Let's see what we need to do in here to install it and get FPV in there. And yeah, let's go from there. Now I've gone ahead and got these out the packaging. This is the ER5C, this is the ER5A. You'll see the difference. Servo sockets on the top, rosters the side, antenna coming up versus going outwards. I'm assuming this is the swapping antenna, because you've obviously got these long ones here. It's just a case of taking these off and you'll have a little UFL connector that'll go in there. I'll have a quick look at that in a second. Both of these have their own unique little instructions. Quite useful that you've got things like what the flashing means. They've got Wi-Fi in them, so we can flash them that way. But yeah, I mean, it's a question of what's going to go in there. It's going to depend how you want this to orientate, how you want to sort of route your antenna out and things like that. They both look fairly easy. But what I'm going to do first off, because I'm interested to see how you actually take the antenna out, because often you need a little bit of a longer path, well, depending where you install it really, but let's have a look at that next. Yeah, as expected, once you disassemble it, there's one screw in this case, although it's got some little tabs to push in, so you've got to be careful. You can see the little UFL connector there you can replace. This one has 4 screws, and then this bit comes off. Again, be very careful if you're doing this, because they're quite delicate. Ditto, the UFL connector is not something you want to take on and off more than a couple of times. They're very delicate. As soon as you figure out what antenna you use, you can just set it and forget it, and hopefully you don't have to come back to it again. Anyway, let's have a look at the car and see what we need to do now. So this is the car ESC, and I have to admit I'm a little bit worried about if this will work. Obviously there's a servo plug here going to the servo here for steering, but it's also got a built-in receiver, so I'm a bit concerned about, can we separate that so we can drive the motor from its own servo lead. So I'm just going to get this out and see what we got there. Okay, problem confirmed. I've taken the ESC out. This is the top, I've taken that off, and this is what I've got. That's the on-off button, that's the Dean's connector, that's where the servo goes, and that's the receiver antenna. This whole thing, you can see it's shiny, it's all conformal coated. You can't see any of the individual components. Obviously there's nowhere else to have a servo going in to control the ESC. It's all inbuilt essentially, so I have to replace this. Unfortunately as well, there's nothing on here to tell you the specs of this. I did find this online. It's down as a sort of generic ESC of don't know how many amps or what battery it supports. I'm guessing it's something like up to 30 amps. Look at the size of it, the fact it's not got any air cooling or anything. So yeah, I mean, I'm really keen to try the car out because I think it'll be fun. So let's get ourselves a different ESC and we'll reconvene magically with this jump cut. Ta-da! Got the new one. I just basically went on eBay looking for things, and there's a lot of very cheap car ESCs, like you can get 120 at once for not much. But the only one that actually had dimensions was this one, and dimensions are important because I've got quite a small space and I haven't got that much depth to put it in. So I've got this one, and this says it's waterproof ESC, 35 amps. So I'm not going to go into great detail about how I fit this and thinking about how I get the FPV stuff in, because we're about this. But what this should do is provide a BEC. It says 2 to 3S LiPo, BEC 5 volts, 2 amps. So I should be able to connect the receiver up to the BEC, which should allow me to turn the receiver on and let it go into Wi-Fi mode, and that will let me flash it. Hopefully. Let's try turning it on, see what happens. So switch on. Hey, you got a green light flashing. Okay, let's see if we can connect this and flash it. Okay, so as per normal, I just let the receiver sit there until it started flashing to say it was in Wi-Fi mode. Connect to the Wi-Fi network, and it tells me it's using the DIY 2400 RX PWM firmware. Quite an old one, so I'll be updating that. I'm not going all the way because I still haven't updated some of my stuff to version 3. I will be doing that eventually. I just need to get there. So we are flashing. This is the DIY 2400 RX PWM, that one, and we're going to flash Wi-Fi manual 10.0.0.1, and the rest of this stuff is all good. So yeah, let's go ahead and build and flash that. Right now, the main difference between using this one on version 2 point something, version 3 something, is you can use the 5th channel as a sort of full resolution channel, but we're only talking about using 3 channels, and it's very easy to update even after you've installed it. That's the benefit of Wi-Fi. Okay, success. Now, I'm not sure if this is config I'm going to keep. Obviously, this is very temporary. I just wanted to hook this up, make sure it could connect. I've just got this on this radio, and I've changed some slight channels around. So I've put forward and backwards on this stick because it's sprung, and I put the steering on yaw essentially because I thought, well, it's kind of going reverse of what you'd normally have, but that's no good as a throttle because you kind of need it to spring back to get your reverse in if you want to go in reverse. So what I'm going to do next is obviously fix this in place. Just turn this off. And then try and figure out what I'm going to do about FPV gear, where to place this. I'm thinking this wants to go on the spoiler, preferably in a vertical polarization. But you know, we'll take what we can get. The more tricky thing is getting a decent FPV camera, because this has got a great big lump there, which is great for fitting gear in, but when you're looking out and that lump's in a way, it's not good. Obviously I would have fitted that on top of there, but this body shell is just plastic and that's going to shake around. I didn't really want to make great big changes, but let's see what we get. I'll come back and show you what I installed, and then we'll go out and we'll try and drive it, and we'll see what sort of range we get on the ground out of one of these guys. You know, it's not easy to get this thing to go nice and slow when you want it to. So I wanted to show you what was in here. Obviously I've got it hooked up to this little guy, and it's a little bit of a squeeze, and you can see it's not perfect because it's got this great big lump there which is hard to see over, but I didn't really want to do anything to it. But underneath the covers, and I have to say, I've only been doing this for about an hour. It felt quite fun to just do what I call a quick and dirty conversion. We've got the ESC in there, that was the new one, and just a couple of cable ties around. The new on-off switch is there. We've got a beeper in there, that's set to channel 5, so should I get into trouble, hopefully that will help me alert it to its position. Obviously then I've got servo leads, and I didn't have any, they weren't quite the right size, they wouldn't quite fit under there, so I've ended up with some small extensions because it's the only ones I could find, going up to here, and then I've mounted the antenna in a vertical polarization. Obviously I've got the camera here, VTX here, and antenna here. Part of the reason it didn't take so long, as you can see it's not particularly tidy, is because I already had this set up on a plane last time I looked at a PWM ELRS antenna. I thought, you know what, I'll just pull all this off and I'll make up a slightly different lead. So what I've got here is a little 2S balance lead, and what happens is I plug this guy in there, and that runs this bit. And part of the reason I chose this is obviously this hasn't got, you know, any flight control or anything, so we need quite helpful things like, where you can't see at the moment, let me just cover that camera, you can probably see it, we've got the voltage there and we've got the time we're running. That's the only sort of on-screen display information I've got. Obviously this can run smart audio, but nothing's running there. I'll have to double check what power this is running at and then decide what to run it at. And as you saw, one of the problems there is once we put the top on, we have got, I mean, I've faced the camera up as much as it can, but we can't really see what's directly in front of us because we've got that top there. So it kind of depends where we're going to go. There's also a slight problem here that this wasn't really designed to have leads going through there, but rather than sort of cut holes, I've just like, oh, it'll go, it'll be fine, what's the worst that can happen? Is it perfect? Not by a long shot. It's quick and dirty. I kind of like the fact that, you know, I just chucked this together in an hour, and it you know, it's ready to rock, to see what happens, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do on this. Now, one of the issues is, of course, that without any RSSI information on the screen, how do I know how the signal's holding up? Well, obviously, if it just stops, I know bad things are happening. What I also did, I set up a telemetry screen here, which shows me my link quality, the RSSI dBm value, and my timer, just to see where I am. And hopefully, you know, if I'm starting to think, oh, I'm out quite far, I can just have a quick peek, see what that's reading, and see what we need to do to enhance it. But I think, as I said, not perfect, but it goes. So that's the main thing. Next, I want to take it out and see what we can do. Have a bit of a drive, see how it bears up, and see how this little guy works. Okay, local park, first test. It's a pretty big area. I mean, a couple of football pitches. If you can get over there, that'd be fine. There's actually a path that goes all the way along, but it kind of dips under that grass verge over there. It'll be interesting to see if the signal can take it. And off we go. Now, the idea here was to use the grass because it doesn't dip down, and I can go along here and see how the range is before I try the path. Now, the grass was cut a couple of days ago, and I thought it's okay because the sun's out, it'll be drying out, it won't be wet, but I didn't realise that it was absolutely going to cover my car. Now, I got to the end of the field, but by that time I could barely see anything, so I thought let's bring it back and sort it out. I think we should try and avoid the grass if we can. Jesus Christ, look at the state of that. So I thought we'll just bite the bullet and we'll see how we go on the path. If anything bad happens, I can pretty much steer it onto the grass and full throttle and hopefully get to where the signal area is better, or, you know, it's not a huge amount of space and there's not that many people about, so it should be okay. So trundling along the path I go. And what I really like about this is the bemused look on people's faces. They can't really work out where the car's coming from. And if you have a look at these little kids that see the car just coming up, they go crazy. They're like, oh my god, what's this car? I want this car. Here's this little boy's face here. He looks transfixed, and the other one's pretty excited by it all. But it was fairly safe. I noticed the trim was a little bit out, and I managed to pick a radio which didn't have trim, so I had to wait until I got back, and what I did is I changed the offset slightly. Now we're down the bank here. You can see it there on the left, so we're sort of under the direct line of sight, so this is what worried me. And you can see that the VTX is, you know, having a bit more of a problem here. We're running at 500 milliwatts just because I'm not in the air, and it's doing okay. I mean, it's quite drivable, not flyable of course, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is, I think, the worst position. and it's doing okay. So fairly happy there. I have to admit, I didn't really look and check what the signal strength was on the receiver, because I was mainly concentrating on making sure I didn't bump into any people, making sure I knew where I was going. It takes a little bit of getting used to driving at such a low angle. It's very different from walking around, and because I've got that big lump there and I can't see directly in front of me, it makes it a little bit hard to see directly what's in front of you and where you're going. I didn't expect it to be quite so bad here. Again, that grass verge is quite high here, and we're further away at a sort of diagonal angle, so that directional antenna is not having any effect here because my head's facing the other direction. So we pretty much have to wait until we get round the corner where the Omni jumps back into effect, and we're able to pick it up there. But this is pretty much the home straight now. Now this is just a few hundred meters either side, but the fact it managed to get through what is essentially a solid grass verge, I think is pretty encouraging. So I'm looking forward to testing this out more at this point. There's not really much more I can do here rather than keep going around and have fun driving up to people and looking at their faces, which is always interesting. But I think that's pretty much all I can get out of the park. But it's a useful test ground because we're in a very safe area. Nothing bad's going to happen unless one of these children decides that they're going to take the magic car away for themselves. So we can but hope that they don't. And I was very lucky not to be pursued by any dogs, actually, which is weird. I thought they'd really be after it. Anyway, here I am, pulling up at my own feet. Okay, site number 2. As much fun as it was looking at the bemused faces of people, we've exhausted that part. It can't really go anywhere. Where we are here is in the woods, and a section where it sort of splits. We got up there, down there, and then up there. That sort of mud path I think is most friendly. This stuff here, although it's quite small, on the sort of size of this little car, that could well, I don't know how well it'll work, but I thought I'd try going back up there, check this trail out, and then see how far we can get. There's an awful lot of curves and hills and cover, so I think the VTX will give up way before the Express LRS receiver, but I'll check out what the telemetry's doing, sort of see what signal we've got there as we go. Here's what I imagine would happen. I thought it's gravel, it's nice and sort of loose, the suspension would cope with it no problem. No, this was the worst bit of FPV driving I've ever done. Obviously you would get seasick if you kept doing this, but I persevered. I went all the way to the end where the trail ended, and then I came all the way back again. But it wasn't a great test in terms of like having fun, but I did get to at least have a look at the RSSI signal. Well, that was pretty horrendous. Despite it not being that bad, I got sort of bounced into the grass and all over the place. I think if you had a great big sort of 1/8 scale car, you'd be alright. This little guy, he's bounced about. So we're going to go over there next, miss this bit out, and try the sort of flatter earth and see what it's like. But once we got to the end, which is several hundred meters away, link quality was 100 and we were at minus 83 dB, so signal is strong. Okay, this is a bit more like it. You can see it's not the smoothest ride ever. Although we've got a sort of mud path, you can see how active the suspension is having to work. And these are oil-filled shocks. These are supposed to be a lot smoother than the regular stuff. And already, just going this far, it kind of feels like we're lost in the woods. It's incredibly different to look at it from this sort of angle. Whenever I'm flying through the trees, I'm always, around head height, generally speaking, and it looks quite similar. When you're down low, it's so different, and with that lump at the front where the sort of roof of the car is, it can be quite hard to pick up the trail. I didn't expect it to look quite so thin. This looks fine when you're walking on it, because of course your feet automatically seem to know where to go, but it's really, really thin when you're driving a little car. And this thing has a tendency to sort of steer a bit quick, and you see there I've managed to go slightly off-road, pop it in reverse, and off we go again. My plan here is just to go as far as possible that I can go. I know it goes in you know, it twists and turns and there's lumps and bumps and little hills and things, but it goes in a sort of a vaguely single direction along the way. So it's really the case of how long it's going to go and what's going to give out first. Looking around at just how much foliage it is, and bear in mind we've got a little cherry antenna for the VTX, which is you know, only about 6 inches off the floor. I was amazed quite how far it does get. I mean, 2.4 that the receiver is on obviously does manage to cut and penetrate through foliage like this better than 5.8 does, but you know, it's not magic. It can't go through solid things. So it's like, wow, it's still working. How far are we going to get to go? And at this point you can see we start to get little flashes. We've got little drops happening on the screen. Although it looks fairly dry, this came back absolutely covered in dirt. It was just throwing up from those tyres there, and it's still holding out here, and it looks like I'm going through tunnels, and that VTX is starting to go. I'm like, uh-oh, is this a good point to turn around? And then the bridge came up, and it's like, oh, this looks alright after all. And I thought, I know, I'll have a quick look at the RSSI indication, which I did, and then as I started going forward, it's like, this isn't going to hold out. Let's turn around here and let's go on back. And of course, going on back, the reception's around the same. I mean, it's not really like a quad. We haven't got a great big battery in the way or anything, so it was okay. But let's speed this bit up, because going back this way is much the same as coming the first way. I even did a little crash into the bush and had to reverse out again. But we got back all safe and sound. Everything held up nicely. That was oddly exciting. It feels like you've gone for miles. Reality is that bridge is like 200 or 300 meters away tops, but it's around a bunch of corners and over little hills and bumps, and we got caught up a couple of times, and it feels like you're absolutely miles away, because when you're in a quad or plane you can easily turn around and look at yourself. What happened there is, when we got to the bridge, the video signal wasn't good. That is this Tank Ultimate running at 500 milliwatts, and that had pretty much reached the end. I mean, there's a lot of bushes and stuff in the way. ELRS, the signal on that one was at -80 dBm with a link quality at 100 when I looked down at it just before I turned around. It might be a good idea, if you're doing this, to conformal coat stuff. I'm just looking at the amount of crap that's getting chucked up by the wheels, and yeah, there's more than you think, even when it's like relatively dry. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can find one more spot that we can drive around. There's no big straight areas. If we had a big massive straight area, then we could go probably a lot further, but that's really not how it is it? So let's see what we can find and have another drive. And that's what I did. I had another couple of drives, and sometimes I just drive and drive until literally I couldn't see anything, and then I'd take a note of the RSI indicator whilst I went and rescued it. On this particular one, I couldn't even turn around because the signal on the VTX went so badly. But the very worst dBm on this one was -90. I also had several instances of getting stuck. On this particular one, I thought there was a trail, and then it just sort of turned into grass, and I thought, oh, that's bad, I should turn around and come back. And then basically I got stuck on one of those big tufts, and yeah, from there it wouldn't move, and I had to come on down the trail and find it, because it was just sort of sat there spinning its wheels as best it could. Well, I really did underestimate just how rutted and difficult this terrain was for a little car, and it's absolutely fine signal wise, but it's completely stuck. It was not coming out. It's just it's just up on a little rut, and it was the same most of the way down here. So yeah, that was a decent distance. Again, the lowest we had on the receiver was -90 dBm, and with that we had complete snow on an 800 milliwatt VTX signal. So I think the receiver checks out pretty well. Everything needs somewhat of a clean now, and the beepers failed, so I think water's got into there or something, so we'll check that out when we get back. I'm sure I'm not supposed to have quite this much fun when I'm working, but I really did. Here's the car a bit more cleaned up. I say a bit more, it's still sort of dirty there, and the beeper works again, so I think it's just got wet and dried out. But yeah, if you were going to do this sort of in case things, or be careful, because does wish up water. This isn't a video, of course, about making an FPV car. That was just a lovely side effect of what I was doing to test out these receivers. So here I was using the ER5A, the other one is the ER5C. So depending on what you're doing, we know they work well in a plane and you'll get great range. You get great ground range as well. So if you're talking about using cars or boats, you will go further than you can see. And if you're FPVing, you will also go a long way, but probably your VTX will give out before the signal will, which is a good thing, I think, because it starts getting snow. You've got plenty of signal to turn on around and come on back, which is what you're after. As for this little guy, this is absolutely staying in place. This is too much fun. I want to do more of this. If I was doing this properly, of course, I wouldn't just have chucked this together in an hour. And I think really you're after a slightly bigger one. I think this is like 1/12, 1/14, something of 1/10, where you can add an HD camera. You can put sort of more stuff inside and mount things better would be fine. But hey, this is not a tutorial on making a car, but if you've got something, just try it, throw it together, see what happens. You can always come back and change it or replace bits or mess around with it. It's good fun. Do it. Anyway, many thanks to RadioMaster who supplied these lovely receivers. I'll try and figure out where to put this one now. And of course there's links down below for where you can get more details on those. I hope that review's been helpful, and if you're inspired to drive a little car around, then have fun with it, and I will catch you next video. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.